Welcome back to Forward Progress, part of the Hammer Betting Network. I'm your host, Jason Cooper, alongside Peter Bukowski, co-founder of The Leap, host of Locked On Packers and Locked On Sports. Today, you can check out Peter on X at Peter_Bukowski. Today, we'll be covering everything you need to know about the Green Bay Packers in 2024. But before we get started, quickly, comment below how many wins you think the Packers will get in 2024. Let's jump right into it. Peter, before we start looking forward, we must look back. Packers finished with a 9-8 record last year. Jordan Love's first season under center. Before we get into 2024, give me one word or phrase to describe the 2023 Packers season.
I think promising is the word that I would come back to, because the first half of the season, it did not go particularly great. The first 3 games, you go, okay, 2-1. They probably should be 3-0 after 3 games. And then, I was beating my chest a little bit. Why are they a touchdown underdog at home to the Lions? And then the Lions dog walked them. And you go, okay, that's why. Because they're not ready yet. They're not there yet. They had a tough October, and then we saw at the end of the year, I mean, they looked as good as any team in the NFC. The young talent coalesced, and that's where the promising comes in. I mean, this was the most inexperienced passing battery in NFL history. It was the youngest pass catching skill group ever. There was not a player in their skill group not named Aaron Jones who was old enough to rent a car last year. Like, that's what we're talking about. That's how young they were. They had one third-year player that had a chance to really start, and that was it. And they didn't. So this was an incredibly young team that I think exceeded all expectations last year, and that's why they're one of the favorites in that tier after the 49ers in the NFC this year.
Yeah, and the NFC is a lot weaker than the AFC. Just doing these previews, that you can kind of tell which teams are kind of in it, which teams are kind of out. In the AFC, it's like everyone's in it, but in the NFC, like the Packers have a legit shot here to take a look at a deep playoff run. We'll get into that shortly. But first thing I want to touch on is kind of what's changed throughout the offseason. The biggest change for me, obviously, is their coaching change, firing Joe Barry and hiring Jeff Hafley. Packers were ranked 28th over the last 3 seasons in EPA allowed per play under Joe Barry. It improved a little bit last season, but to me, just looking at the defense, it feels like the talent kind of underperformed. You bring in Xavier McKinney, and you have Jeff Hafley now as the new defensive coordinator. Tell us a little bit more about Jeff Hafley, kind of his play calling style, and what changes you expect to see for this defense under a new defensive coordinator.
Well, Jeff Hafley, a little bit of a chameleon in his coaching career too, because he's played a number of different styles. If you go back to the 49ers, when he was with the 49ers, they don't play that style. Robert Saleh does not play exactly the same way as he did then. I mean, it's been 5-6 years since he was an NFL coach. A lot has changed since then. I mean, we've gone through the whole Fangio tree, and it's like just sort of like, unless you have Vic Fangio, like this kind of doesn't work. Unless you're Brandon Staley for 1 year and you have Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. So that's the interesting part to me, is we don't really know what this is going to look like, because Jeff Hafley at Boston College with middling talent was one of the most aggressive blitzer man coverage kind of coaches in college football. One of the most aggressive on third down, one of the most aggressive in the red zone. Not just blitz looks, zero pressure looks. Like, everyone is coming. Like the way you or I play Madden on defense. Like, that's how Jeff Hafley called his defense at Boston College. But they didn't have to do that at Ohio State, because they had the horses. They could play kind of vanilla on first and second down, and then on third down, they might tune you up. They played a lot more press man coverage than I think they're going to play now. But in a world where the league is now in too high, everyone wants to live in these too high safety looks to mitigate the big plays. I think you're going to see the Packers play a lot more single high than they did last year. Jeff Hafley has talked about wanting to play more single high safety, find that true post safety. That's Xavier McKinney. Everyone wanted to play this cover 3, Sky, Pete Carroll, Robert Saleh, Gus Bradley defense, but no one had Earl Thomas. Like, it's really hard to do if you don't have Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill, Bobby Wagner, like all those guys. And so I think the Packers are going to play a style of defense that we don't see a lot in the NFL right now. More man coverage than most teams are going to play, more single high than most teams are going to play, more cover 3 than a lot of teams are going to play in what has become a quarters heavy world. And that's going to be fascinating, because the Shanahan offense was kind of created in a lab to beat up cover 3. So it's like, okay, how are you going to make up for some of those things? And so that'll be something that, and I was just saying this on Locked On Packers the other day. I'm not sure we're going to know for a full year what Jeff Hafley's defense is really going to look like, because you have Xavier McKinney in year one. Eric Stokes, this could be his last year in Green Bay. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option. Edgerrin Cooper's a rookie. They drafted Tyron Hopper in the 3rd round. He's a rookie. Is Quay Walker going to be a long-term piece of this team? Kenny Clark is in the last year of his contract. Like, this team could just look really different in a year, and that might change the way that Jeff Hafley wants to play. I think that's good. I think a coach that adapts his personnel is essential in the NFL, especially on defense. But that makes this really hard to predict what's going to happen.
Before we get into the next part of the episode, just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors over at Pinnacle. Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sportsbook, offering competitive odds for 25 years. If you're looking to bet on the NFL, NBA, NCAA football, or any sport for that matter, you should have Pinnacle as one of your available outs. Bet smart, bet Pinnacle. Must be 19 plus, and please play responsibly. Yeah, no, those are all great points here, and I'm excited to see the way that they run their defense. It's going to be interesting to see the turnover from even this year to next year and years looking forward. I want to flip over to the offensive side of the ball here and talk a little bit about the offensive line. Obviously, the Packers struggled with their offensive line, with the fact that David Bakhtiari over like the past 3 seasons just has been unable to play healthy. On top of that, they lost starting right guard Jon Runyan from last year. They also lost depth tackle Yosh Nijman. Although they brought in Andre Dillard, a little bit of tackle depth, and they drafted Jordan Morgan, so I'm just curious about how you see this offensive line play out in 2024. Do you expect Jordan Morgan to kind of be a starter out of the gate? Could he be playing left tackle for the team come week 1? Who do you see filling in that right guard position for Jon Runyan? And how do you feel about the O-line as a whole coming into this year, including the depth?
Yeah, Jon Runyan Jr. is going to be replaced, at least it looks for the moment, by Sean Rhyan, who was the 3rd round pick in 2022, a tackle convert from UCLA, who got some reps down the stretch last year. It seemed like this was based on play, but I talked to Jon Runyan Jr. after the year, and apparently it was more based on the injury. He just couldn't physically hold up for a whole game, so they were trying to spot him some reps. Sean Rhyan ended up being the guy, especially late in games. He's a better run blocker. Right now, more of a people mover, and I think that's the kind of run game the Packers want to have. We see Sean McVay say, hey, we're going to run duo. We're going to run these gap and power schemes. Even though my bread and butter was outside zone, now we're going to do this other thing. If teams are going to live in 2 high looks, we're going to pound you with a power run game and dare you to stay in those 2 high looks. And so Sean Rhyan is probably going to be the starting right guard. After that, I am sure Elgton Jenkins is going to be starting for the Packers. I'm not sure where. And I'm sure Zach Tom is going to be starting for the Packers. I'm not sure where. The Packers have been willing to say, we will just put our best 5 on the field and figure it out. And last year, with David Bakhtiari's injury, they had to shuffle some pieces around. It was Rasheed Walker and Yosh Nijman competing. Rasheed Walker wins that deal. 2 years ago, you had Elgton Jenkins coming off ACL. They wanted to play him at right tackle. He didn't hold up well at right tackle. They moved him back to left guard. All of a sudden, he looks like Elgton Jenkins again. But they're not happy with the center play with Josh Myers. And so Elgton Jenkins has been getting some reps at center. Could Jordan Morgan then start at left guard with Elgton Jenkins playing center for Josh Myers? I think that's a legitimate option. Could Jordan Morgan just be their swing tackle to start the year? I think that is very much in play if they're happy with the way that Josh Myers, I think that's possible. I think they want Jordan Morgan to start, though. And so if he's good enough to be one of their best 5, to be one of their best starters, I think their preference, honestly, would be to have him play left guard. Move Elgton Jenkins to center. Elgton Jenkins is under contract. Zach Tom has been a really good right tackle. Unless Jordan Morgan comes in and just looks awesome at right tackle right away, which doesn't seem like super likely, they could move Zach Tom to center. But I think left guard is the place that makes the most sense. You slide Elgton Jenkins right in there at center, and I think Elgton Jenkins could be an all-pro kind of center, and this offensive line would be awesome.
Yeah, no. Are you worried? Just out of curiosity, worried about the depth at all, or do you feel like the depth is there for
because of the flexibility that Jordan Morgan gives you? Like he's legitimately. I mean, it's mid-June as we record this. He's practiced at 4 of the 5 spots on the offensive line. Like he is their Swiss Army knife, and I think that gives you a lot of flexibility. The same is true of Andre Dillard, who a little bit overmatched as a starting tackle, but is someone who I think as a swing tackle, that's good depth. I think he could play guard in a pinch if you needed him to. Elgton Jenkins, that positional flexibility, that gives you that that flexibility as a coach to say, okay, we can mix and match here. Same thing with Zach Tom. He's played guard already. Jordan Morgan can play guard, can play tackle. So I think they probably have 6, 7 guys that they feel like are capable of starting for them in any given game. I mean, there are teams right now in the NFL, you know this, that don't have 4. And the Packers have 7. And so I think they have good depth. I think this is one of the deepest offensive lines in the league. They don't have the high-end talent of like Detroit, at least as of this moment. You know, who knows? Zach Tom, I think could ascend. I think Elton Jenkins is an elite high-end talent. But they have great depth. And in a lot of cases, it's more about who your worst offensive line starter is than who your best is. And if you're the Packers and you have this kind of depth, like that gives you a pretty nice cushion if you have injuries that you have to deal with, because inevitably you're going to have injuries.
Yeah, no, exactly. I was just wondering because I felt like they didn't really have after I guess their top 4, they don't really have too much experience on the offensive line there. But again, like the pieces are there for them to be successful, even still if they're facing a cluster injury on the offensive line. I want to flip over to the run game because you mentioned something a little interesting here. Obviously, just to set the scene for those who don't know, Aaron Jones was cut by the Packers this past offseason. They bring in Josh Jacobs. They draft Marshawn Lloyd. Just want to get, first of all, your initial reactions to that Aaron Jones getting cut and then the Packers replacing him with Josh Jacobs. How do you feel like Josh Jacobs fits in this power run game scheme? And then also for the fantasy heads out there, do you see that Marshawn Lloyd could work in it at all in his first year with the Packers, or is he just kind of planted behind A.J. Dillon as the RB3?
I don't think he's planted behind A.J. Dillon as the RB3. I think that the Packers using a 3rd round pick and their first of 2 3rd round picks on Marshawn Lloyd and only giving A.J. Dillon like this hyper specific qualifying offer that you only get to have based on certain rookie sets of circumstances, like that is pretty telling about where the Packers view A.J. Dillon and Marshawn Lloyd in terms of their trajectory. Adam Stenavich, the offensive coordinator, could not stop raving about Marshawn Lloyd. And like, we haven't even seen him in pads yet. So they're really, really excited about him. Going back to your Aaron Jones point, though, that was genuinely shocking when that happened. I don't know that it's going to be a huge downgrade from Aaron Jones to Josh Jacobs. If for no other reason, then I think Josh Jacobs is going to give you 14 or 15 games for close to sure. He's 2 years younger. Aaron Jones over the last couple of years has not been able to stay healthy. And so that's part of the calculation here. The Packers, based on some of their offers, like they really wanted him to take a deep discount to come back. And I think that is telling. They were willing to give Josh Jacobs significantly more money than Aaron Jones. They see this as an upgrade. I do think they were hoping they could have both. I think that was the plan initially. And Aaron Jones was like, well, this is not going to work out then because I'm not going to take this deep of a discount. I think he ends up only getting understanding $1 million is a lot. I think it ends up being like a little less than $1 million overall. So that's part of the business is the Packers are going to set these hard caps and just say, we're not paying more than this. So if you think you're going to get more than this, go get it somewhere else because it's not going to be here. That can create animosity. That can create a situation where you want to go play for a division rival, even if it's not a great situation because they don't care about running the ball in Minnesota. But I think this offense is still going to be really good running the ball. I think they are going to use more of those gap and power schemes. And Josh Jacobs is a perfect fit there. They also want to use him more in the passing game. So again, if you're a fantasy head and you want to get into these half point and full point PPR conversations, I think Jacobs is going to see more volume as a pass catcher. I think Marshawn Lloyd, much more than A.J. Dillon, is going to see volume as a pass catcher. And I'm not going to be surprised if almost right away, maybe even right away, they have packages for Marshawn Lloyd where it's just like, okay, he's going to come in these 21 personnel looks, 2 running backs, and he's going to be split out. He's going to be jet motion. He's going to be in orbit motion. He's going to be playing, the wing. He's going to be doing all these different kinds of things. Those are going to be opportunities for them. And I think Matt LaFleur is one of the most creative play caller, play designers in the league. If they want to get him the ball, they will find ways. And I can't wait to see him with the ball because even in just the little glimpses we've had, the burst, the suddenness, the explosion, he is a really fun player. And I think fans are really going to like watching him play.
Yeah, I watched him a lot at USC. He was super explosive over there. That's why I'm kind of excited about him and wanted to bring him up for this. And also, something that just stuck out to me as well. You mentioned how they're going to utilize Josh Jacobs more in the run game. I think it was Matt LaFleur was talking about, one of the things he mentioned when talking about Josh Jacobs and the signing of him was his pass catching ability.
Yeah.
So obviously that's a clear signal right there that that's where he's kind of looking.
Something he did a lot more
at
at Alabama than the Raiders ever let him
Yes.
do. I mean, it was a lot of swings, it was a lot of screens, it was a lot of checkdowns, and I think he's capable of doing a lot more in the passing game than he's been given the chance to show. And he said that too. He said, "I'm excited to be able to do more." You go back to 2019 when the Packers had all these injuries at receiver, like Aaron Jones as a receiver won them the Kansas City Chiefs game. I know no Patrick Mahomes in that game, but he had a slant and go that would have been a touchdown if he could have kept his feet in. Had another big play, and then the key third down, it was like 3rd and 6. They ran a play for Aaron Jones out of the backfield. For whatever reason, that advantage did not continue. I think there are some reasons for that require a longer conversation, but I think Josh Jacobs is going to be able to take advantage of some of those opportunities, and they'll find new opportunities for him in that regard as well.
Yeah, and speaking of pass catching and the passing game in general for the Green Bay Packers, Jordan Love looked great in his first season as the starting quarterback for this team. He's looked to take on kind of a bigger role this offseason. I found it interesting. He was calling his own plays alongside Adam Stenavich at OTAs. Don't worry, LaFleur is still going to be calling plays come season time, but just a show of him kind of taking on a little bit more as a quarterback. Along with that, obviously, this receiving core, you mentioned it earlier, one of the youngest in the NFL. They don't really have a true number one receiver, but like they kind of have a good depth of talent in their pass catchers, including their tight ends. So my question here is, how do you see the passing game play out for the Green Bay Packers in 2024? Do you feel like there's going to be a wide receiver by committee approach where it's kind of just hot hand, whoever's playing really well, they'll be getting the ball a lot for that game? Do you see anyone potentially stepping up and becoming the alpha in this offense? And then also tell us a little bit about the maturity of Jordan Love and how he's looked this offseason.
So let me actually start here. Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love were asked about this question of the alpha. And I don't think they were giving diplomatic answers when they said, we like it this way. We like it where any of these guys in a given game, in a given matchup can go off. And I think that is part of the beauty of this offense, this illusion of complexity offense that Matt LaFleur has built, where plays look alike. You have, personnel groupings and formations and base plays that look similar and end up being different. The play action shot plays, all of that stuff. It's predicated on the defense thinking, oh, this is like that other thing that we just saw. And so when you don't have Davante Adams and defenses can't just key, like if we want to dial up Dagger or some of these like pet Shanahan tree plays, Yankee and these big shot plays, well, we're going to key up to stop Davante Adams on them. Well, what if it's a different guy out there every time running that concept? That makes it much more difficult to defend because you can't go, oh, well, we know when they get in these 2x2 stacks on 2nd and long, they like to run this concept with this guy to this. You can't do that. And that is, I think, a valuable piece. I think I could give you probably 5 guesses on who the first Packers receiver to get 100 yards was this last year, and I bet you wouldn't get it. And it's not shade on you, because the answer is Bo Melton. And like that, it's someone that they picked up in the middle of the season against the Minnesota Vikings in, I believe, week 15 or 16. He was the first receiver that they had to get 100 yards. It wasn't Jaden Reed. It wasn't Romeo Doubs. It wasn't Christian Watson. It wasn't Dontavian Wicks, who are going to be names that are mentioned ahead of Bo Melton. And yet it was Bo Melton that had the first 100-yard game. In the playoffs, Romeo Doubs had a 100-yard game against the Cowboys and was awesome. Huge plays in that one. Against the Lions on Thanksgiving, it was Christian Watson. Against the Chiefs the next week, it was Christian Watson. Against the Saints, against the Bears, it was Jaden Reed. And so their ability to be multiple makes their offense more dangerous. Now, does it make it fraught from a fantasy standpoint? Yes. Yes, it does. But this offense last year was 5th in EPA per play with a first-year starter at quarterback. You lost an all-pro left tackle, and you had a committee at left tackle until midseason. At the end of the year, you had a right guard committee because one of them was hurt. You got less than 40% of snaps from your Pro Bowl running back, and you got less than 40% of snaps from your ostensible wide receiver 1 coming into the season, Christian Watson. He was slated to be that when he was healthy. In the middle of the year, he was that, and by the end of the year, he was healthy and not that. And I think that tells us something. But that's how good this offense was last year with all of the weirdness, with all of the first-yearedness. Luke Musgrave misses a month with a ruptured spleen. He's a rookie tight end. Okay, kick that rookie tight end out of here. Here's this other rookie tight end, Tucker Kraft, and he's awesome too. It is such a credit to Brian Gutekunst and to Matt LaFleur and to Jordan Love that they were able to just keep on going, and not just keep on going, but get better and still have these growing pains. I mean, there was a play in the playoffs where they run a run pass option, an RPO, and no receiver in the playoffs. No receiver ran a route. You needed one guy to run the route, and the one guy didn't run the route. And this had already happened once in the season, happening against Minnesota in that losing streak. So you're just sort of like, they were supposed to be over some of this stuff. And it was a good reminder, like, this team was not supposed to be one defensive stop away from the NFC Championship game. And they were. And I think that goes back to your very first question. Like, the promise of this team is really remarkable, because I've been saying this all offseason, they can be the best offense in football this year. And that's how good they can be.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic. I love watching this offense as well. The way Matt LaFleur draws up plays and all those sorts of things, I absolutely love it. Let's flip over to the expectations and talk about the win total right now over at Pinnacle. Right now, their win totals juice towards the over around 9.5. They're plus 225 to win their division, plus 899 to win the NFC, and then 18-1 to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, Green Bay Packers, like you said, were promising last year. They exceeded expectations, 9-8 record, one stop away from the NFC Championship game. Matt LaFleur has proven beyond reasonable doubt that he's definitely an elite coach in the NFL. But one thing that I like to say is that progression isn't always linear. So despite being one stop away from the NFC Championship, what are your expectations for the Green Bay Packers in 2024?
I'm so glad you used the magic phrase of the offseason, if you're a Locked On Packers listener. Progress is not always linear. That is true. I don't see a reason for it to be non-linear in this case, because they were so good last year with all the young players. Basically, everyone would have to regress. You know what I mean? Like, if Jaden Reed takes a little bit of a step forward, it's okay if Dontavian Wicks doesn't, or he regresses a little bit. If Tucker Kraft takes a little bit of a step forward, it's okay if Luke Musgrave regresses a little bit, as long as the regression isn't like Jordan Love turning back into a pumpkin or something. Like, I think they're going to be fine. I have a Packers over 9.5 ticket. I have it with plenty of juice on. I think I got like minus 137. I have a Packers to win the NFC North ticket at plus 250. And I have the Packers. What did you say it is? 18-1 right now to win the Super Bowl?
To win the Super Bowl, yeah.
I have them at 25-1. I have a Packers to win the Super Bowl 25-1 ticket. So I'm all in on the overs. And I was last year. I said, take all the Love overs. If he plays every game, he is going to smash those overs. He hit the over by like week 13. Like, it just, the upside here is crazy. Now, does that mean they're going to win? No, of course not. That's not how this works. But I think that they're still a little bit undervalued. And I was saying that last year. I think the infrastructure here, the combination of Brian Gutekunst, Matt LaFleur, and Jordan Love, and before we knew Jordan Love was anything, just Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur, was really undervalued. And I think it's still being undervalued right now. We saw them against the Lions. I mean, outplay the Lions in their house on a short week on Thanksgiving. Like, that's not supposed to happen. Not in a season where the Lions are having a charmed season and the crowd is roaring, and the Packers, very first play, Christian Watson bomb sets up a touchdown, and it's just sort of like shell-shocked on Thanksgiving. They show that they can go swing for swing with these heavyweights, and I expect them to do the same. I think, given their schedule, they're playing week 1 in Brazil instead of going to Philly. That is a Philly home game that is now in Brazil, and your listening audience may not know, the Packers are the Brazilian team. Like, they are the biggest team in Brazil. This is going to be a Packers home game in Brazil. Now they have to travel, right? But it's still, this is going to be like the Jaguars in London. This is going to be a home game for the Packers in Brazil. And so I think this could be an 11-12 win team. I have been tempted to play some adjusted overs just because I think that they can do that. I did that a couple years ago and they won 13 games. I had the adjusted over at 12.5 because I was getting some nice odds on that. And, you know, they win 13 games. 13 games is not going to be crazy to me this year. I know that the NFC North is going to be a little bit better. I think the Bears are going to be a little bit better. But I have that much faith in the infrastructure here in Green Bay. And I believe, man, I really do. And the energy right now at camp, man, it is, I did a whole segment opening on this on a show recently. Like, the vibes are unbelievable. And even from longtime journalists who are not generally like vibes-based guys, guys who like barely even know what that word means in modern context, are just like, this feels different. There's a different energy around the team right now. And look, we can retcon it after the fact and say all those things, but like that's what's being said right now about this team. Doesn't mean they're going to win the Super Bowl again, but they believe, and they are building this the right way. I can't wait to see them on the field and see what kind of wrinkles Matt LaFleur has for them, what Jordan Love looks like with everyone on the same page. Everyone knows the playbooks now. They know what Love wants. This is going to be a very, very dangerous team. They are going to be a pain in the ass for every team that they play this season.
Vibes are real. The aura is there. Friday, September 6th is their first game of the season in Mexico. It's going to be a lot of fun. But that just about does it here for us. So let us know your thoughts on the Packers in the comment section down below. Make sure you check out Peter on X at Peter_Bukowski. If you made it this far, that means you like this content. So please press that like button. It goes a long way for us. And if you enjoy this content, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're previewing all 32 NFL teams here on Forward Progress as we make our way towards training camp. So make sure you subscribe. Stay up to date with our newest videos. And if you're not into notifications or anything like that, there should be a button on your screen. Click that link to the playlist. Go bookmark that playlist so you'll never miss out on our newest content here. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. We'll see you in the next one.